This conversation is brought to you with the kind compliments of CALL, that is, the Commonwealth of Learning. Gender inequality must be eradicated, and CALL is on a mission to help in its obliteration. It has embarked on a project to help young women and girls become motivated to pursue their fields of interest and build the future generation of leaders by launching the Commonwealth Wise Women Project. This is a mentoring program that links girls from across the Commonwealth with mentors also from across the Commonwealth who are women in leadership roles with a story deserving of emulation. But CALL does not stop there. CALL is now taking that initiative further by creating this podcast series where I get the opportunity and privilege to interview some of these distinguished women and hear the path they took or the path that took them to leadership. COVID-19 has joined the long list of contributors to gender inequality, including globalization, technology, and climate change. But stay with us through this 10-episode series and hear how women have made their way over and around these hurdles. I am Dr Ann Wallace, a higher education management and e-learning specialist, and I will be your host. Today's episode is entitled Condition Your Mind for Leadership by Dr Nneka Abulokwe. Welcome, Dr Abulokwe.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to have you. I would like to introduce our audience to you by reading from your very exciting bio. So just allow me to read from the bio a little bit so they get a sense of who this lady is. Dr. Nneka Abulokwe is an innovative technologist, digital governance entrepreneur, and board director. She has over 25 years experience in the corporate world. She is the founder and CEO of Micromax Consulting. In 2013, she joined the board and executive committee of Sopra Steria as an executive director. In 2017, Nneka became the chair of the board of the nomination committee at the Information Systems Audit and Control Association. As the chair of the board, she introduced the board nomination process by corporate governance activities. She promoted diversity and leadership inclusion among the management of the organization. In 2020, she was appointed non-executive director, University of Cambridge, on the Audit and Risk Committee, and non-executive director for the private equity-backed Davies Group. Nneka was born in London to a Nigerian father and a Jamaican mother and grew up in the city of Port Harcourt, Nigeria. She obtained her Bachelor of Arts degree in history from the University of Port Harcourt in 1991 and her Master of Arts degree at the University of London. She obtained her doctorate in business administration degree from the Cranford University School of Management in the UK. In 2018, Nneka was ranked 4th in the Financial Times Top 100 Tech Leaders in the Black Asian Minority Ethnic, otherwise known as BAME. She was also among the finalists of governance professionals for the 2018 award of the Governance Institute. In 2019, Dr. Abulokwe was featured on the Power List 100 as one of the most influential Black business leaders, placing her among the UK's 100 most influential Black people. And she was listed among the 100 most influential people of African and Caribbean origin in the UK. Also in 2019, Dr. Nneka Abulokwe was appointed an officer of the Order of the British Empire by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II for services to business. Nneka is a keen amateur golfer, bent on becoming a hardy all-weather player this winter, and she is a massive advocate of all things dance.
Thank you, Anne.
Dr. Abulokwe, we are in 2021. And
Indeed.
you are already on the 2022 Power List 100 most influential people of African and African Caribbean heritage in the United Kingdom. You're the head of an organization. You sit on numerous boards. You are, I am aware, a very, very busy lady. And so we appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today. So to get the ball rolling, please tell our listeners in your words what you do.
And you've done me very well. And thank you very much for inviting me onto this program to talk to you. And I do all of what you've said and then some. But most importantly, I do it with a lot of professional pride. It has been an interesting journey so far. I'm at a point now where I have worked in corporate life all my career to date. And I left full-time corporate life in 2017 to then pursue the things that I really wanted to do as an independent, and that has gone well. I say to myself, I worked hard for the first 25 years of my life, and now I'm working smart. So I'm using all that I have done, all the knowledge, all the experience, to which I'm very grateful, and I have a lot of people and organizations and family to be grateful to and for the opportunities I've had. And then now is a time for me to harness them and really begin to do the things I enjoy doing, more a labor of love. And that in itself then has a feedback loop into generating income and wealth for myself. And I think that is very important as a woman in business, a woman of color in business, a leader, and also a trailblazer. So many different things there, all in one. I haven't walked this journey alone. I have a lot of people, as I've said before, to be grateful for and to be thankful for, starting with my parents. You talked about my parents, my Nigerian father, my Jamaican mother, who have been married, incidentally, for 66 years now.
Wow.
And they both live in Nigeria and thankfully healthy. And my siblings, a whole host of relatives, friends, colleagues. I mean, the list is endless.
Yes, this is exciting. What you've just told our girls is a lot. You've given them a great understanding of how a woman can be a leader and still enjoy it.
Indeed.
A labor of love. And you talk about your parents, your Nigerian father and your Jamaican mother. And as I look at that and I try to work out, well, what would she call herself? Born in Britain, Nigerian father, Jamaican mother. And I thought, you know what? She must be a Nigerian Brit.
That's the first one for me. I tend to call myself a global citizen.
A global
British
citizen.
born, Nigerian father, Jamaican mother, all in one creates a really unique mix. Honestly, a unique cocktail.
That's a unique cocktail, which I'd like you to share with our listeners. I want them to hear how this diverse and colorful heritage has prepared you for the life that you live today.
And it's really that is really an interesting question, and a question that forms the basis of my essence of being, really. My father was a student in the 50s, so he was sent by the Nigerian government, and this was pre-independence. So he was sent, this was in the colonial times, but he was sent by Nigeria to university in the UK. And at that time, as part of the empire, most of the colonies of the empire had a relationship with Britain whereby they would send their brightest students to the top seats of learning in the UK. So he came in to do accounting, politics, economics, and naturally went to the London School of Economics. Okay, so he was a scholar there. Mm-hmm. My mother, on the other hand, also came from Jamaica and was sponsored by the Jamaican government also to study. And my mother came here to study nursing. And it just so happened that my parents met at an Afro-Caribbean ball, a Christmas ball, and this was in 1954. And the African male students had gone there. I mean, this was a dance that was put on, by the Caribbean Society, and had gone there. My mother had also gone there with her friends. And you wouldn't believe it, a lot of my father's friends who he attended this ball with ended up marrying West Indian ladies as well. Mm-hmm. Anyway, my parents got married in 1955. Mm-hmm. And at that time, that was a very unusual thing to happen at that point in time in terms of our history and our heritage. And sadly enough, it wasn't embraced by my mother's side of the family. Mm-hmm. So my mother was actually disowned for marrying an African. And, this is something that she then, my mother was 21 at the time, my father was 24. My father was finishing off his degree. My mother finished off her studies as well. And then they, by the time they went back to Nigeria in 1956, they had two small children. And my mother went back to begin to build a life for herself in Nigeria. So one of the first to then go back as a married couple to Nigeria. And they lived there. My dad was contracted to go back to Nigeria because he had studied, and then he had to go back to then be part of the class of people who were going to take over power when Nigeria then gained its independence in 1960. So that was important for him. So that education and all that backing. And I think for my mother as well, I think that, her family were quite disappointed because she was marrying a Nigerian, and then moving and not going back to Jamaica, but moving back to going to Nigeria with her husband. Mm-hmm. Anyway, fast forward, Jamaica got its independence in 1962. And I think it was by invitation. My parents, both my mother and father, went to Jamaica for the independence ceremony. And my father was actually recognized as part of that whole process because he went there in his full African attire and everything. And that was the beginning of the building of the relationship again with my mother's family and everybody, and the family at large. And my father was very, very keen that we as children, I'm the last of 6, so I came much further down the line. My father was very keen that family was very important to him. And we built a relationship with my mother's family. My mother's influence, although we lived in Nigeria, was very, very strong. So I grew up eating a lot of the Jamaican food, the curry goat, the rice and peas, cho-cho, all of, bami, saltfish, all of that, ackee and saltfish and everything. And of course, a lot of bakes. My mother's a great cook. And she cooks both the Nigerian and the Jamaican dishes. And we were, my mother came back here again during the Nigerian Civil War. I was born in the UK, but I did most of my formative years and my growing up in Nigeria, and then came out to the UK again, post my first degree, to do my master's, my doctorate, and also work alongside that. So that has had a massive, in terms of the impact it has had on me as a seasoned professional today. I've come from 2 very hardworking parents who infuse their values, their cultures, to create a global citizen that can quite easily adapt, in the world. I've worked across the world. I've worked in Asia, I've worked in Europe, I've worked in the Americas, and it has been easy. I've grown up with quite an open culture base for myself and my siblings, which has really been invaluable in terms of the value we're then able to add back to society and influence society, not just society, but also the business world at large.
Wow, that's quite an interesting background, and clearly it has had a profound effect on you and your development. And I'm hoping that our girls are hearing that you can choose your spouse.
Indeed.
And it can work for you. It can work.
My mother was very big on doing that. And in terms of, she defied her family, but she had a mind of her own. And today my mother is 87 and has been a very, very strong, positive role model she became a teacher and then has owned a school and has trained several thousands of Nigerians. And she's very, very highly recognized and respected in Nigeria today and supported by my father.
Very good. When we hear that you grew up in Port Harcourt, Nigeria, and speaking from this side of the world, perhaps we may wonder that, well, that is a country that is very rich in culture, not to mention rich in oil, but rich in culture And we wonder what it would have been like for you as a girl getting an education. Now, I know your situation would have been perhaps not your procedure as you've described it is clearly different from many others, but I still wonder if you had encountered any challenges as a girl getting an education at that time.
No, not particularly, not at all, actually. There were no barriers. And in Port Harcourt, where I grew up, I didn't notice any barriers and I didn't feel disadvantaged in any way. Good. That could be a function of coming from two parents who placed a great emphasis on education. But that also could be a function of the time, in Nigeria at the time and in Port Harcourt where I grew up. Education was big and there was education for all. As a matter of fact, Anne, there was free education for everybody.
Oh, that's great. That is
indeed.
So
indeed.
Would you say then that education, is there anything in your educational background then that pointed you to leadership in technology as you are today? Or is this something that evolved as you entered the world of work? Because you studied history. You started in history, yes.
Indeed. A bit of both. And I'll let you into some of my background as well. You see, today I work in tech. And I'm one of the leaders in tech in the developed world today. Okay, one of the Black female leaders in tech. All my studies were in the arts. Today, I represent STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths. Another twist to that as well was that I struggled as well in school. I was not academic and I struggled. And my parents actually made me repeat 2 classes. So my age mates, and in Nigeria, it wasn't so much about your age, so you're in the class with the same age mates. It was more on ability. So if you were bright, you could get a double promotion. And if you were not so bright, or if you struggled, you were held back. And in my case, I was held back twice. So my age mates and my peers were 2 levels ahead of me. This happened in primary/secondary school. And I knew that I struggled with the sciences, but I had a natural flair for the arts academically, but a natural passion for the sciences, things like technology, things like anything to do with engineering and stuff. But I couldn't write a line of code or anything to save my life. Now, when I then got to a point whereby before my O-levels at the time, I think it's now called GCSEs now, I now went into the arts stream. I started to excel academically, okay? And then went into doing history, as you've said, and then did my master's in history and a bit of international business. But the thing that I enjoyed doing the most and had a natural flair for was in computers and computer sciences. Now, this was interesting. Indeed, this was about building. I was one of the first to actually build a computer from scratch. I would do all the technical stuff at home. I had a brother who was very, very technical minded, took me under his wing, and showed me the way, and, in very, very simple terms. And I remember the things he would teach me. I would go and spend, he was about 13 years older than me, so quite a bit older than me. And I owe a lot of what I do today for him exposing me in very simple terms, of the interesting natures and the principles behind the sciences, okay? Now, when I then advanced into my career, it was a natural pathway for me to go into technology. Everybody thinks that you have to be a coder or you have to write code to go into technology. I have never written a line of code, although I have a deep appreciation for tech. But I've always been on the management side, the management and the leadership side of technology. So providing technology teams to clients, doing big, scary projects, but facing off to the clients, building those relationships, doing all the account management, doing all the delivery management, and managing the team as well, the team who provide the technology solution. So it has been a natural pathway for me to then advance my career in technology because I was very good at understanding the underlying principles of technology and managing it at a much more senior level.
I think
that was a unique combination.
Very, very special for our girls here. Nick. This is really special. For you to have experienced the educational journey that you had coming up, being held back for obviously good reason, because now we live in a world where it's tick the box and go forward, tick the box and go forward.
Yep.
You have demonstrated to us that being held back has helped you, and it's also showing us that it should not be seen as a disadvantage. It is important that you learn. Being there to learn is that you learn. And so that is really very good. And for someone who has been through that kind of journey to now be in charge of STEM and STEM related, this is really powerful for our girls to hear. And then you talk about not coding, and I think of coding, and I know that for a long time coding was for boys.
Yeah.
It was felt coding was for boys. And as a matter of fact, I dare say, for a long time, it was more Asian nationals.
Indeed.
But here you are, whilst you're still not coding per se, you're doing so much around it. What advice would you give to a young Black girl who's seeking to pursue a career in coding?
Now, technology has become front and center of our world. We're speaking today because technology has enabled us to not just speak in terms of voice, but also visually. Mm-hmm. Any girl who has the flair for coding, I would advise to go into technology and not be intimidated or daunted by the fact that there are more males in that area or that sphere than female. Now, another thing that is happening, and in today's world, there's a growing social consciousness about women and the role of women in technology, especially, or in STEM. Any girl who has the flair and natural ability for coding and who doesn't go into it is doing herself a disservice, because we now have, or we have a growing infrastructure or a growing social structure in which girls are welcomed and girls are accepted in the technology sphere. We talk about diversity, and everybody talks about, or a lot of people, when you first talk about diversity, people think about diversity in terms of race and gender, but I also talk about diversity in terms of intellectual diversity as well. Now, if you have male, a sea of male coders or a dominance of male coders, we're missing the female insights as well. And studies, and these studies have proven that women also bring a different lens to things and also are probably less error prone and more leadership. And people coding is not just the bottom rung. You have it right up until the top of this, the senior levels. And we've seen what happens when women are in positions of authority within that area. It's missing. We need to plug that gap. And it's not just missing for women, it's also it's missing for women of color as well.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because when I listen to you and I look at you and I listen to you, and I am so very impressed by what you do. And I think to myself, well, Nneka has a double whammy, as they say. Nneka is a woman, Nneka is a Black woman. Did you have challenges? Did you encounter challenges because of that?
Yes, and yes, I say that a measured yes, because I encountered as many challenges. And being a Black woman, I started in the corporate world in the early 90s. And at that point in time, there were very, very few women here in the UK, because I started my career in the UK. So I worked in a white male-dominated industry. And it so happened I was in tech, okay? But for me, that didn't limit me, because I had grown up in a society that appreciated the art of the possible. And I'd also been taught to go out there and do the best I could, regardless of anything else. And knowing that my knowledge or my being a woman and a Black woman was not a disadvantage. Now, going into my career, I started off from as everybody, as an analyst, the lower rungs of the career ladder. And worked my way up. But guess what? You see, it wasn't so much about my technical brilliance. And when I talk about the technical brilliance, I talk about what you do, your day job. It's the ancillary things, the things you bring to the table as well, are just as equally important. I had bosses who knew I was reliable in terms of I would show up well. I took pride in what I did, and I did my job to the best of my ability. But I didn't just stop there. I went over and beyond. So within the organization, I would take on extra tasks, and I always did that. Now I have a lot to thank to the bosses who recognized the talent and promoted me based on talent. But the thing about it was that I got a lot of training, but I also got my knockbacks as well. There are many, where do I start if I start talking about the stories that happened? But you see, there's always the light at the end of the tunnel, and which wasn't an oncoming train in my case. It was the next challenge for me, or the next opportunity. And sometimes there were times when I was trained within organizations, when I was promoted within organizations, but I got to a level and I didn't move any further. And I was still doing and outperforming my peers. And you find that when you then get that promotion, you think you've shattered that glass ceiling, only to see that there's a concrete one above it. But at that time, I moved outwards to another organization to move upwards. And that has been my career trajectory. So go in there, prove yourself, advance, and then move. And I moved outwards to then move on to the next organization and the next challenge, yes, and then continue to do so. But the other thing I also did, and which was very, very much part and parcel of my career advancement, was I always did studying. So I was either doing a master's, I was doing either executive management courses, or doing an executive doctorate alongside my studying. So when I was starting off, I did all the usual courses funded by myself. I then went to do a master's funded by myself alongside my work. I then did executive management courses, were sometimes funded by my employers, and then took it upon myself to say, okay, now I'm in senior management, and to make that transition into executive management, which is the top and the totem pole of my career, my career ladder, I needed to do an executive doctorate. And that in itself, my peers didn't have to do that. But as a Black woman, I had to be twice as good or work twice as hard. But what happens? You become twice as good. It isn't in vain.
No.
It isn't in vain.
And it pays off.
It does.
It certainly has paid off for you. You have graced many a boardroom.
Yes.
And what you just said makes me think of a quote from Sheryl Sandberg in her book, in Women, Work, and the Will to Lead. And she said that social gains are never handed out. They must be seized. I want you to tell these young girls who are listening, young girls and young women who are listening to us, when should they take the decision to seize what is out there? Like you said, you were working, you turned up well, you studied and worked, and you seized. I want you to explain to our young girls, how do they develop that paradigm of seizing?
Yes. And that is, you touch on something that is the heart of me, at the core of what I do, and a core value. And I can translate that into, you earn the respect of people, but you have to show up. You see, so for every time, and I'll give a classic example of the first time I was at the exec committee board level of an organization, I was different, okay? I was the only Black female, and probably 4 career levels down, okay? So the lone ranger there. But you don't expect to be given a pass because you're a female and you're a Black female and you look different. As a matter of fact, you walk through those doors, and by dint of the fact that you're different, you will be treated differently. These are our unconscious biases that precede all of us. We all have our biases, okay? Whether it's Black, white, everything, okay? But given from my perspective as the lone Black female, You know, I came there as a seasoned professional, a highly qualified professional, a governance professional, a tech professional, and somebody who had value to add to the organization. And I didn't let the differences stop me. But what I did was I began to perform, and very quickly, people then begin to see you as a substantive professional in your own right. The fact that you're a Black woman becomes secondary because you are delivering value. They see that. And that has happened with every single role I have done. I give talks today, and I give talks in schools, and this is one thing I'm very passionate about doing, to young females, Black females in particular. And I say to them, I said, respect. I said, there's nothing sweeter than when respect is earned, because people, you have gone there and you haven't gone there saying, oh yes, I'm a Black woman, this, that. No, no, no. There's some level of humility that precedes you. But when you go there and you begin to perform, and this has happened throughout my career, you know, when you have a star performer and the clients are calling you back, we want Nneka Abulokwe to deliver this. We want this person, you know, that is trust, and trust is engendered as well. Mm-hmm. And you have to build that trust for others to then see you as a safe pair of hands and then begin to see past your gender and your color. But if you go in there throwing that into the mix first and foremost, you're to a large degree, you're doing yourself and your race and your gender a disservice.
Yes, I agree with you. And I think that is very good for our listeners to understand that what we have shouldn't ever be seen as a handicap, and it should never be a crutch for our development.
Indeed.
It is performance, and a performing to the best of your ability. But you know, I want to switch tack a little bit, because I once watched a video of you. You were speaking to women in Nigeria, and I was watching this video, and then you broke out into dance. And now I've learned that you're an amateur golfer. So I want you to tell us what you do in your downtime.
And you touched on something that will forever, you know, precede me, this dance thing. You know, I'll go back to when I was growing up, and I was young, and, you know, and I loved to dance. And I didn't want to study, I just wanted to dance. And one thing that happened was that my mother, of course, being a teacher, was very stern, and you must study, you must do this. And my father was more he was a bit more liberal. And he said to me, Nneka, you know something? You are bright. You're one of the bright, because I was, as a kid, I was really inquisitive, bright, you know, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed. And I just loved to dance. Anyway, he allowed me express myself in dance. And he said, you will come into your own in time, in the fullness of time. And it did happen. And my mother, although she was a stern teacher, was also a secret advocate of mine, okay, because I could dance. Anyway, I go fast forward. I come to the UK, I do all the good things, and then I go back to Nigeria, and I'm speaking at a conference. I'm the keynote speaker at this Inspired Women of Worth conference, okay? Women from all walks of life and backgrounds and stuff, you know, and, you know, a really upbeat conference. And I go there and I give a keynote speech, and I think it was either navigating labels in my career or something to do with, you know, the powerful negotiator or something like that, you know, something sort of, in the corporate sphere. Mm-hmm. Anyway, as I was leaving the dance stage, the compere says, oh, Dr. Nneka, not so. I mean, the podium as I'd finished. The compere says, oh, Dr. Abulokwe, not so fast. We hear a little bird tells us that you used to be a dancer and a competitive dancer. And I said, uh-oh. And before I even had a chance to even say something or run off stage, they just put this music on, and it was Make That Move by Shalimar. And Anne, I tell you, you never lose those moves, because before I knew it, I was there break dancing, doing the moonwalk, doing this, and I kicked off my red soles, kicked them off, and I started doing my thing, and the place erupted. Now, a video was taken, a video clip, because this would all happen impromptu, you know, it just happened on the fly. And the video clip was 36 seconds. And I dubbed that my 36 seconds of fame, because somebody posted it on Instagram, tagged me on Instagram. And my followership went from probably 20 or 30 on Instagram, right up until how many thousands, and that video went viral. Now people remember that video more than they actually remember that talk. And this is why, and I say to people, this is why we have to bring our true selves to whatever we do. I express myself in dance, and also I've taken dance to the boardroom as well, because it is how I know how to express myself.
Yes.
And there are many metaphors and there are many similarities and alignments between management and dance, and getting people to be effective and things like that. There's even a flash mob I did with my team, a team of directors I had. It's on YouTube. If you put in Sopra Steria flash mob on YouTube, you will see the flash mob we did in our canteen with my entire team. We did this. We got a street dance crew in to come in, a young Black street dance crew, taught us, and we did it.
This is exciting. We'll be back after this short break. The Pathway to Female Leadership is brought to you with the kind compliments of the Commonwealth Wise Woman Project. Before we went to break, you were telling us how you make dance work for you, but you were telling us too about how your authentic self shines through in everything that you do. I want you to also tell our listeners why it's important to carve out that soft side, so to speak, that break, that downtime, especially for a woman leader.
And it's important. It's important on so many levels. And I am a living example of what it can do for you as a person. I don't have to think or put on my best self or whatever. I'm my natural self. I'm not going to rock up to work in my beach wear. There's an attire for work. There's the appropriate way to behave, of course, and there's a business etiquette as well. But what you find is that you bring something extra that shows that human side of you to others. And that in itself sets you apart, but also sets you alight. It brings you to life. It shows that human element. I work in an industry which is quite, it's quite stilted. Technology, governance, digital. These are things that are quite stilted and sometimes you need to infuse them with life, okay? You resonate better with people when people can see, not necessarily the vulnerable side of you, but that side, that essence of you that makes you Nneka.
Yeah.
Every time I say to people, or we're chatting, and I say, I dance, what kind of dance do you do? And I say, street dance, freestyle. Oh, street dance, freestyle, we must do that. Today, somebody sent me a video of me dancing in Nashville last week. I went on a board, this is as part of a company I serve on their board. We had a senior leadership team meeting, and we had an evening, dinner and just, relaxed evening. We went out to one of the honky-tonk bars in Nashville, and we had a wonderful time, and everybody there danced and socialized, but we got to see the essence of people. Yeah. And guess what? I was there doing my thing, and that video in itself has gone around the organization because, you're there showing that personality, that essence of Nneka, and that connects you to the next person. All of us were dancing. We were white men. There was Black women, there was Asian, there were Americans, there were UK people from the UK, there were people from Canada. It was just all over, but that dance united us.
Yes.
That was a common bond we had. And that showed a different side of my personality. People know that, yes, Nneka is good at what she does, but you know what? In the round, this is Nneka. Nneka would love to be a hardy golf player. I mean, of course, I've been playing golf for a few years, but I'm not competitive or anything. And I'm still very much a beginner and an amateur. But this winter, I've given myself the challenge of becoming an all-weather player. So got the winter gear, and I'm going to go out there and see how fast I can push myself and how far I can drive my handicap too. It's another challenge.
Well, clearly, I think you're going to do it. You're going to do it. I can see that you're going to do it because you are, by all you've said, you are a problem solver.
Indeed.
without a question. You know, the Director General of the WTO, Dr. Ngozi Okojo-Iweala said, I believe that when you find problems, you should find solutions. And that sounds a lot like what you've been saying to me today. Indeed. How would you tell our girls that when they, you know, girls who are quite clearly facing a lot of problems and just trying to make it into the world of work, what advice would you give to them? Here they're starting and there are all these problems.
Yeah, there will always be problems.
Obvious.
Yeah, and you see, we learn and we grow through challenges and problems. You see, and we can't see the problems as barriers. They may be barriers, but they're there to be broken down. And we have the will and the might to break down these barriers and move on. You know, there are things I would have told my younger self, you know, and when I look back on my career, I worried a lot about stuff. The one thing I've learned is to trust my instinct, because what is your instinct really? It's your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind sees a lot more and feels a lot more than the conscious mind. Yes. And those are your guiding principles and things like that. And when you then begin to learn to trust your instinct and then begin to rest on your instinct, you can do things differently and you can dare to be different. You know, the biggest challenges I've had in my life in terms of, I'll give you an example. I talked about the fact that I struggled academically. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I came to the UK was it diagnosed that I was dyslexic. I have problems with reading, and I don't say I had problems. I have problems with reading, mm-hmm. and to a large degree writing. I mean, I drop words and I know there's certain patterns, you know, and even my assistant knows my patterns, you know, so she knows what to look out for. Mm-hmm. But there's no shame. I mean, and when I would write all staff emails and stuff to go out, I'll get a member of my team to please just proofread this for me because I know, you know, and I get them to proofread it. Now, the biggest thing I did to challenge that deficiency for myself was doing a doctorate. And doing a doctorate in Cranfield and under the tutelage of a gentleman or professor called David Partington. David Partington was pedantic. He helped with the English dictionary and things like that. And he would, and my other supervisor, Jonathan Lobson, would actually take me through my paces in terms of my written work. But Anne, I tell you today, you know, I pride myself in my written work. I may still make mistakes because I'm human, but I see a step change because I challenged myself in that deficiency to solve that deficiency. And I have improved so much better in terms of my critical skills, my analytical skills, and my ability and my confidence as well to go out there and to work shoulder to shoulder with the next person and to soar. So there are things that you may find or you may see as challenges within you. In a challenge, whether it's within the workspace, within your family life, but those are your growing pains. If you come out the same person, then you haven't learned anything. You come out of a challenge a newer person and also a richer person for that experience. I am a firm believer in that, and that has been my trajectory throughout life.
Well, I believe that our listeners have gotten something to work with here. Challenge yourself, believe in your instincts, break the barriers when you encounter them. Oh my goodness, this is a lot. I thank you ever so much, Dr. Nneka Abulokwe.
Thank you so much, Anne. Thank you for having me today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. We have been in conversation with the dynamic, effervescent, dancing, golfing, Dr. Nneka Abulokwe, OBE, outstanding entrepreneur and a female leader in the Commonwealth. On behalf of the Commonwealth of Learning Wise Women Project, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. Tune in for our next episode when we have another dynamic female leader from across the Commonwealth.
I am Dr. Ann A. Wallace, signing off until the next time.